والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيبنا وقرة أعيننا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. Alhamdulillah, in our lessons on Al-Ajurrumiyya, we have reached the further discussion of the seventh marfu' noun, the seventh of the marfu'at. We've already done the fa'il, the substitute fa'il, the mubtada, the khabar, the ism of kana and its sisters, the khabar of inna and its sisters, and the final is at-tabi' lil marfu', the word that's a corresponding noun to the marfu'. Now the corresponding nouns of the marfu', we've done one of them already. We've done one out of four, which is the na'at man'ut, the descriptive phrase. The adjective follows the word that it describes in its inflection. And we took that before. Today we will look at the remaining corresponding nouns, which are three more types. So it's a total of four types. Right, so a corresponding noun, which is at-tabi'. And at-tabi' in Arabic, right, it means a word that follows another word. Because taba'a means to follow. Now, it follows the other word in its inflection. Right? And that's what it follows. Right? So when we say that it's corresponding, that you have these four types of words, they correspond to other words in the sentence. Therefore, they have the exact same inflection as those words. The only reason we're mentioning it here, under the scope of the marfu'at, the nouns that are marfu', is just in the possible situation that this noun is corresponding to a word that's already marfu'. Right. So if any of these four were to be corresponding to a word that's mansub, they would be mansub as well. Right. So this is not specific to marfu'. Right. Right. So these words, they pretty much follow. Right. They're not words that have their own autonomy in the grammar. That their ruling is based on something else. And if that something else is mansub, they are mansub. If it's majroor, they are majroor. If it's marfu', as we're talking about now, they are marfu'. Right. So the word that we're talking about, these four words, are called the tabi'. Right. These are the corresponding nouns. Now the word that they're going to be corresponding to is called the matbu'. Right. The matbu' is the word being followed. The word being followed. Tamam. So, right. So we've already talked about adjectives. Right. Adjectives already. We mentioned that the descriptive word, the adjective itself, has to correspond with the word that it describes in four things. Right? And as a general rule, there are a few exceptions. They must correspond in gender. They must correspond in number. They must correspond in their definiteness. So if one is definite noun, the other one has to be a definite noun. If one is an indefinite noun, the other one has to follow. Right? And the fourth is in the inflection. So if the adjective is describing a word that's marfu', the adjective becomes marfu' as well. Right? So if I said, هذا, this is baytun qadimun. Right? هذا baytun qadimun. Baytun, qadimun are both marfu'. Right? Baytun is khabar, and khabar is one of the marfu'at, and qadimun is following or is corresponding to that. Therefore, it's marfu' as well. The next three types are the conjunctions, which are particles that are used to combine two different things under one ruling. And we'll take each one as they go. And then there's the nouns of emphasis. Again, they are a type of corresponding noun. And then there's the nouns of substitute. So as for conjunctions, conjunction, junction, what's your function? Right, they're much less complicated than they are in English. Right? So conjunctions are merely particles that connect two corresponding words under one ruling. They connect two words under one ruling. And what we mean by ruling is under one inflection. Right? This word and this one combined, they're both marfu'. This word is mansub, combine it with this word, they're both mansub. Right? So you're combining two things under one ruling, which is nasab or rafa' or jar or jazm for that matter. Now there are essentially 10 conjunctions in Arabic. Right? Al-huruf al-atf. And now atf in Arabic, ayn, ta, fa, means to join. It means to join. And it's actually the same word that you would use for emotions. Awatif are emotions. Right? Because, right, we don't have to go into the because, but, right? So atf means to join. Right? So the conjunctions, they join between two things. So you have, right, there's a few of these that have contextual translations. It may be a better translation if you found it in a verse that the translation that I've put here may not fit as greatly. So you have wow, that's your general and, right? So dakhala zaydun wa amrun. Dakhala zaydun wa amrun. Right? So zayd, if I have a jumla ismiya, for instance, and I say dakhala zaydun, right? Who can, I don't know if, will you be able to take their answers if they answer? So who can tell me what role Zayd plays in this sentence? Dakhala Zaydun. It's the doer. Good. Right, so Zayd is the fa'il. Now, if I wanted to, right, I didn't want to just say Zayd entered. I want to say Zayd, Amr, Ahmed, right, all of these people entered. Then what I would do, I would just use a wow. And this wow will join all of them under the same ruling of being a fa'il. Right, because they're joined to Zayd. Right, so you have Zaydun wa Amrun, right, wa Ahmadun, and you can use multiple conjunctions in a row. I think there's a bit of a delay. It's okay. Right, so what happens here is that the wow itself is called harf atf. Right, it's a conjunction. Right, harf, right, atf. Right, and then the remaining words, right, become what's called ma'tuf. Right? And this is not really what the book goes into. This is much greater detail. But we want to make it clear that the wow combines these additional words that are joined to the original word, which is the matbu', under the same ruling. So all of these words end up becoming marfu'. Right, so if somebody asked you, why is Zayd marfu', you would say, because it's the fa'il. Right, if somebody asked you, why is Amrun and Ahmed marfu', you would say, because they are ma'tuf, they are joined to Zayd by a conjunction. They are joined to Zayd by a conjunction, therefore, because they are joined to Zayd, they get the same inflection as Zayd. Right, if I change the sentence and I say, I saw Zayd, ra'aytu Zaydan, and then I wanted to add a few other people. Right? I saw Zayd and Amr and Ahmed. Then I would say, Ra'aytu Zaydan wa Amran wa Ahmadan. And you would say, why is Zaydan mansub? You would say, because it's the maf'ul. Right? Why are the other two mansub? Because they are corresponding nouns to Zayd, which is mansub. Therefore, they are mansub also. Now this applies, right, to all of these. This same exact ruling applies to all of the words, all of the 10 that we have here. except that they give nuanced meanings. Right? So wow, it means it combines all of them together, but there's no specific order. There's no specific order. Right? And these things become very important when you start to look in the when you start to look at the Qur'an with a deeper reflection, especially when you're looking at the rulings that are derived from the Qur'an. Many of the rulings are derived on the basis of which conjunction was used. Right? So in the verse of purification, where Allah describes the wudu, the 4 integrals of the wudu, He says, wash your face and wash your arms up to your elbows, and wipe your head and wash your feet. So and, the word and, it combines all of these things under one ruling, right, which is wash, but it does not indicate any order. So the order in the Hanafi school is not an obligation, it's a sunnah. Right? So whereas the second one, fa, it means then. So fa, it does what wow does, but it adds an order to the mix. Right? So if I said dakhala Zaydun fa Amrun fa Ahmadun, that means Zayd entered, then Amr, then Ahmad. So there's an order involved. So there's a slight nuance, even though the exact same ruling, the exact same analysis applies. Fa is for ta'qib, so it's immediacy. So Zayd entered, then right after Zayd, Amr entered, then right after him, Ahmad entered. Right? Whereas thumma has the same translation as then, as fa, but thumma is a longer distance away. So Zayd, right, dakhala Zaydun, thumma Amrun, thumma Ahmadun, means that there was an order, but it wasn't immediacy. It wasn't that one after another. It just happened that Zayd was first, the second one came, but it wasn't right away. Right, so these conjunctions can give really nuanced meanings to sentences. Right, so that is then. Right, number 4 and 5 are both or. There's a slight difference depending on whether the sentence is a yes/no answer. Right, if you say this or this, right, is it this or this? Right, if it's a yes/no answer, then you would use one. If it's not a yes/no answer, then it would use the other one. And for the most part. Right, so oh, right. هل رأيت زيدا أو أمرا? Right. Did you see Zayd or Amr? Did you see Zayd or Amr? So Zaydan أو Amran. So Amran becomes mansub because Zayd is mansub. Right, so it joins those two under the same ruling of what the original word was, which is mansub, because it's the maf'ul. Likewise. Right, same thing with M, but M is أم خلقوا من غير شيء أم هم الخالقون. M is there's a slight difference between the usage of M. إما means either. إما هذا أو هذا. So generally إما would be used in conjunction with one of the other ones. So you would say either this or this. So you would probably have an O in there or an M in there. Right? If I said aturidu shayan, aturidu imma shayan or qahwatan. Right? Do you want either shy or qahwa, or do you want tea or do you want coffee? Right? Both of them having the same ruling. Number 7 is bel. Bel is to in some ways it's used to correct a previous statement, but not necessarily because the previous statement was a mistake. Right? It's kind of augmenting the meaning of the previous statement to add extra emphasis into it, the next statement. It could be used to correct. Right? Right? So Allah says, أولئك كالأنعام. أولئك مبتدأ كالأنعام خبر. They are like cattle. Bel hum adal. Rather, they are worse. Right, so rather there is not to negate that they're like cattle. right? It's just to add on to more meaning for the next one, right? So if I said, and bel is a bit more tricky as far as usage, because we haven't done all of the different types of sentences, right? So bel would be more used between two different sentences, right? So they are like cattle, that's jumla ismiya. Bel hum adal, another jumla ismiya. Rather, they're this. If I said hada katsun, hada kubun, this is a cup. Bel katsun, bel katsun. Rather, it's an empty cup. Well, actually, other way around. If I said hada katsun, now kats in Arabic is generally used for a cup that's full with water. So if I made a mistake and I said hada katsun, bel kubun, right? Rather, it's a cup. Right? I corrected myself. Right? You can use it that way. But either way, katsun, bel kubun, they both have the same inflection, the same i'rab, because one is joined to the other under the same ruling. La is also used as a conjunction. There are many types of la. So there's a la of prohibition. There's a la of negation, like la akuluhu, I don't eat it. Right? There's a lam of prohibition, la ta'kulhu, don't eat it. Right? But then there's the la that means just merely no. Right? Ma ja'a Zaydun wala Amrun. Zayd did not come, nor did Amr. Right? And Amr did not also. So it's just a negation. Right? So Ja'a Zaydun la Amrun. Zayd came, not Amr. Right? So if I write it down, right, just erase this, make space. Actually, I can. So if I said dakhala Zaydun la Amrun. Right, so it's a little bit slow. Zayd entered, not Amr. Right, so that la is a conjunction joining Amr under the same ruling as Zayd. Right, dakhala Zaydun la Amrun, therefore Amr has the same i'rab as Zayd. Right, lakin is the same. Right, ma ja'a ahadun lakin. Right. Now this lakin is lakin with a sukun on it. Lakin. Lakinna is one of the sisters of inna. Lakinna with a tashdid is one of the sisters of inna. Right. So lakin means but. So if I said uhibbu qahwatan, right, I love coffee. Lakin, right, ahyanan, but once in a while. Right? So then the two words would be joined under the same ruling. And then the last one is hatta. Now hatta is a tricky word, right? With no exaggeration. Hatta is a tricky word in the Arabic language. Hatta can be used as a harfu jar. We've already talked about harfu jar, that it makes the word after it majroor. So hatta matla'il fajr. The kasra on the ain, matla'i al-fajr, because hatta is harfu jar. Hatta can also be used before verbs in which there's an n hidden in it. So hatta n. So if I said hatta turida, it makes the next word mansub. This hatta is an atf. This hatta is an atf. So if I said akaltu samakan hatta ra'saha. Akaltu samakan. Can anyone translate that? Akaltu samakan. حتى حتى رأسها, even its head. Right, so in that case, even would be a better translation than until. Or you can say up to its head. Right. Even would be a more of a conjunction type meaning. Right, so you have samakan and then ra'saha. Right. So both of them are mansub under the same ruling because they're joined by hatta. Now hatta is used only in very specific situations. Right, so one does, right, and we'll discuss that in a moment. Right, so here is the breakdown. Right, and this is a little bit redundant from what we've already done because we've already discussed it. All right, so if a particle is used to connect, if the conjunctive particle is used to connect a word, right, to a marfu', then the word becomes marfu'. Right, so if I said qama zaydun wa amrun. Sorry, my handwriting. I type it and then it shows up much later, very slowly. I wasn't doing that just now. It's quite fast before. There were just too many things going on. Right, so maybe it'd be better if I just typed it. Is it? So if I said, right, قام زيد وعمر. قام زيد وعمر. Right, so Zayd and Amr, because Zayd is marfu', that means, right, Amr is marfu', because they're both combined under the same ruling. Right, same thing if I said رأيت زيدا وعمرا. Right, I saw Zayd and Amr. مررت بزيد وعمر. Right, I passed by Zayd and Amr. And then, right, and you can also use these for sentences. جملة فعلية. زيد لم يقم ولم يقعد. Zayd didn't stand and he didn't sit. Right, in English we would say nor did he sit, but it's wa. Right. زيد لم يقم ولم يقعد. So that's pretty much the idea of the conjunction. There's not much to it. Now, the next word, which is emphasis, has similar rulings, right? So it's a following word. It's a word that follows another word in its inflection. So it adds a meaning of emphasis to it, but this word follows the previous word in the same inflection. If the first word is mansub, the emphasis word is mansub. If the first word is marfu' or majrur, then the second word follows suit. Tamam. So first we have emphasis, which is at-tawkid or at-ta'kid. You can say either way, tawkid or ta'kid. Right, he says tabi'un lil mu'akkad. Right, that the tawkid, the emphasis, the emphasizing word, follows the word being emphasized. Right, and once we have examples, it'll be easier. Now and it corresponds to that word in whether it's marfu' or mansub or majzum, and it also follows that word whether it's definite or indefinite, and that's an important difference, because almost all the time these words are used to match a definite word. They are rarely used as a emphasis of an indefinite word. Right, so there are only 5 main words, right? Actually 4. There are only 4 words that are used for emphasis, and this is called at-tawkid al-lafzi. This is called tawkid al-lafzi, and tawkid lafzi is when you use an actual word, one of these 4 words, to cause your emphasis. There are other ways to cause emphasis. Right, so first is nafs, right, nafs. So if I said, dakhala Zaydun nafsuhu, Zayd himself entered. Right, Zayd himself entered. Right, so, qama Zaydun nafsuhu, Zayd himself stood up. Right. Like if you were to say, for instance, the president himself came and addressed the nation. Or this rich person himself gave me this money. Right? You're adding emphasis that it was not just that person, it was that person himself, and not just, right? There is emphasis on that person. So you use nafs. Now nafs is only used as a mudaf. So you have to have a pronoun that's attached to it. So if I said, let's see if we can get this to work. Dakhala Zaydun nafsuhu. This is too hot. Okay. If I just do this, or did I mess it up? Can I do this? So if I said Ja'a Amrun Ja'a Amrun nafsuhu. Right, so Amr himself came. Is it visible? Okay. Amr himself came. So there's an emphasis between, right, the first word, which is the word being emphasized, the mu'akkad, right, the word being emphasized, right, and the second word, which is the cause of the emphasis, right, which is the tawqeed, the tawqeed. Right now, but you see that nafs is not just by itself. It's not just nafs, right? Rather, it's nafsuhu, right? Nafsuhu, right? So that pronoun on the end, right, means, right, so it's himself. So nafs by itself means self, right? And then the him is from the pronoun. So that pronoun has to match the thing being emphasized. Now, if I'm emphasizing, for instance, a feminine, if I said Ja'at Zainabu nafsuha, right, nafsuha, then I would use a corresponding pronoun. If it was more than one person, right, then you would actually have to make nafs plural, and the plural of nafs is anfus. So if I just write it. And for those who like differences of opinion, there's a slight difference of opinion regarding the dual. And I'll just write a couple examples. Right, Ja'a wa Amrun anfusuhuma. Right, so right, Zayd and Amr, right, Ja'a Zaydun wa Amrun anfusuhuma. So anfus is marfu', anfusu, because Zayd and Amr, the word that it's emphasizing, is also marfu', right, and the pronoun is dual. However, the scholars have debated on whether you should make nafs dual. Right, if you're emphasizing a dual or two things at once, then the relied upon position is that you make the emphasizing word, in this case nafs, plural, not dual. You don't say nafsahuma. Right, some people did say that. Some took that opinion that you would say dakhala Zaydun wa Amrun nafsahuma. That nafsah was nafsani, it was dual. Right, but the mu'tamad is anfusuhuma. Now, if I made this mansub, it would be the same idea. So, ra'aytu Zaydan wa Amran anfusahuma. Anfusahuma, because Zayd and Amr is mansub. The word that's emphasizing it must correspond in the i'rab, likewise. Same exact breakdown applies to plural. So, dakhala al-muslimuna anfusuhum. Anfusuhum. Right, so the pronoun would have to match the plural. Right? Same thing if it was feminine. Right? جاءت زينب وعائشة وفاطمة أنفسهن. أنفسهن. Right? So that the nafs becomes plural. The pronoun matches the exact number of those being emphasized, and then the word nafs, whether it's singular or plural, depending on the situation, gets the same i'rab as that which you're emphasizing. Right? Same thing applies to ayn. Right? So ayn is singular. You can say aynuhu or aynuha. Ja'at Fatimatu aynuha. If I said, and ayn is a tough word because ayn, it could mean the eye, it could mean a spring, it could mean an essence, a thing itself, in this case self, right? That's why we've translated it like that. Right, so if I said, for instance, asabtul, if I said shuribtu katsan aynahu, or shuribtul katsa, I drank the cup, aynahu, itself. Is it hard to see from here if I hold it?
Both. Both work.
Okay. No, probably, I don't know. It might be easier. It'd probably be easier this way. Let's just do this. That's fine. Tamam. So ayn and nafs, they have the same exact ruling. So you're going to say nafsuhu or nafsuha. Right? So if we break it down, all of the masculines, it'll be nafsuhu. Right? If it's dual, it'll be anfusuhuma. Right? If it's plural, anfusuhum. Right? For ayn, masculine, it'll be aynuhu. If it's dual, a'yunuhuma. A'yun is the plural of ayn. If it's plural, it'll be a'yunuhum. A'yunuhum. If it's feminine, right, nafs would be nafsuha. Right? Dual would be the same, anfusuhuma. And then plural would be anfusuhunna. So if I said, رأيت المسلمات أنفسهن. I saw the Muslim women, right, themselves. Now kullu is quite interesting. Kullu is not used as dual. Kullu is not used as dual. Kullu is either singular or plural. Right? So I can say شربت اللبن. What does that mean? شربت اللبن. What does شربت اللبن mean?
I drink milk.
Yeah, I drank the milk. Right? I drank the milk. Good. But what if I wanted to say I drank the milk, all of it? Right? And I want to emphasize that point, that all of it. Right? So then I would use the word kullu. Right? So I would add kullu to the word. And I would say, right, شربت اللبن كله. Right, so it's kulla because labana is mansub, kulla becomes mansub, and then the pronoun, which is mudaf ilayhi, which is attached to it, corresponds the word being emphasized, in this case laban. So laban is masculine singular, so I use hu. If I said sharibtu al-qahwata, how would you translate that? And furthermore, how would you emphasize it? How would you say I drank all the qahwa? What is qahwa? Students? This is a very important question. Good, mashallah. I am happy. Right, so sharibtu al-qahwata. Now qahwa is a feminine word. Right, qahwa is a feminine word, so how do I emphasize it? By using kullu. Right? I want to say all of it. Just like I said, شربت اللبن كلها كله, sorry. I want to say شربت القهوة كل what? كلها. Good. Very good. Right, so the ha, right, the pronoun ha is because qahwa is feminine. Right. Kulla, it's a fatha because qahwa is mansub, therefore kulla has to be mansub. So now same thing applies if it's plural. جاء المسلمون كلهم. The Muslims came, all of them. Now there's a very beautiful verse in the Qur'an that is can be much more appreciated after learning this next rule. So we'll save it for this next rule. So ajma means entirely. Now kullu and ajma are quite similar in their meaning. Right? Kullu means every one of them, or every individual of that thing, or all of that thing. Whereas ajma means that it's all together at one time. Because I can say جاء المسلمون كلهم. The Muslims came, all of them. Right? But that does not necessarily mean that they all came together. Right? It means that they all came. Nobody stayed back. But if I say جاء المسلمون كلهم أجمعون, right? If I put ajma, that means all of the Muslims came and they all came together. Right, so in the Qur'an we have, right, Allah tells us sajada al-malaika to kulluhum ajma'un, and ajma'un is the plural of ajma'. Let me just write the vowels. Okay, to kulluhum. Right, so sajada al-malaikatu, right, all of the angels prostrated. Kulluhum, right, so right, if we break it down, the translation, sajada al-malaika, sajada is a fi'al, malaikatu is the fa'il. Right, kulluhum, right, all of the angels. So the angels prostrated, all of them, ajma'un, all together at the same time. Right, meaning prostrated to Adam alayhi salam out of reverence for him. So if I just said sajada al-malaikatu, that means the angels prostrated. It could mean all of them, it could mean 3 of them, it could mean some of them. If by adding kulluhum, that means every single one of them, not a single one was left back. But that still has the possibility of meaning that a few prostrated now, a few prostrated a week after that, a few prostrated a month after that, but eventually they all prostrated. Right? So ajma'un, which is the plural of ajma', means that they all did it jama'atan, right? As in one group, one congregation, so all entirely together. Right? So kulluhum is the plural. Right? You can see that kullu doesn't change. Kullu, it always stays kullu. It's not like nafs, which became plural once you changed it to a plural. So anfusuhum, you wouldn't say nafsuhum. You would say anfusuhum, but for kullu it doesn't change. It's kulluhu as well as it's kulluhum. Ajma' is what's called ism tafdil. It's a superlative noun. So the singular is ajma'. It's like akbar, right? The word akbar, right? Afdal, atwal. So those are superlatives. It's a comparison. It's the same form as that, but it's not the same type of word. Right? So ajma', the plural of ajma' is ajma'una if it's marfu', or ajma'ina if it's mansub or majrur. So if I said marartu bil muslimina kullihim ajma'ina, how would you translate that? Marartu, who can tell me what marartu means first? Marartu, passed by, right? Marartu bil muslimina, go ahead.
By the Muslims,
Kullihim,
all of them.
Ajma'een.
At once.
Exactly. That's a good translation. At once. Right. So ajma is the singular. Ajma'un or ajma'een, depending if it's marfu' or mansub or majrur. That's the plural. However, both of those are masculine. So if you want to use a feminine, right, then ajma is jam'a'u. Jam'a'u. I'll just write it big. Jam'a'u. Right, so jam'a is the plural of, is the feminine of ajma'. So if I said, and the plural would be, let me just write the plural first. The plural would be juma'u. Juma'u is the plural. Juma'. So if I said dakhala or dakhalat al-muslima, al-muslimat, juma'u. The Muslim women, dakhalat al-muslimatu, juma'u, the Muslim women entered all together. Juma'. Now, don't worry too much about the applications of ajma' and kulluhum. That will come, inshallah, in future classes. But the concept should be clear, that you can use them as an emphasis that shows togetherness, that they're all, right, it's all done at the same time. So, right, there's a verse in the Qur'an in Surah Al-Qamar where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and I want you guys to translate this. So, كذبوا بآياتنا كلها. Okay, if you guys can see that. Right. كذبوا بآياتنا كلها. Who would like to try to translate this? You may need your dictionary, right, and first thing you would need to know is what form is كذبوا. What form is كذبوا? For those who have done the forms, I believe we've covered form 2. Can someone look up form 2 of كذب? Those who have dictionaries at their disposal.
It means to accuse of lying.
To accuse of lying. Now, when you're looking at that, there should be a translation that has the letter B with it. Ba. It'll have a parentheses and it'll have a ba inside it.
Yep.
Yeah, so that ba goes on the object. So how would you translate it? What does ayat mean?
Signs?
Yeah, it can mean signs or verses, both. Right? What does ayatina mean?
Our signs?
Good. So how would you translate it from the beginning?
So they denied
They denied.
every one of our signs.
كذبوا بآياتنا. So one word at a time. They denied آياتنا.
Our signs?
Our signs. كلها.
Every one of them.
Every one of them. Good translation. Right, so we see that kulliha is an emphasis of ayat. Right, so ayat is feminine, so you have the ha. Right, so because ayat comes after b, right, ayat is majroor or makhfood, however you like to call it. Therefore, kulli, right, is also majroor. And that's the basis of this, the conjunction rules. Now, there's one last type of conjunction, which is, so we've covered emphasis, which is substitutes. Right? Substitutes. The author doesn't go into the different types of atf, but there are specifically, right? But substitute is badal. In Arabic is badal. Ba, dal, lam. Badalun. Right. Actually, it's a sukun. Badlun. Now, badlun is a substitute. Right, so you could say badlan an, like instead of. Right, badlan an. Right, so now you can say one word and then have a substitute word following it. So they correspond in their inflection. But what you're doing is you're adding another name. Right? It's usually used for names. You're adding another name for that thing that thing is also known by. So for instance, if I said Chief Justice, right? The Chief Justice, comma, right? Mr. So-and-so came. Right? That's a substitute. So a better example, or an Islamic example would be Ja'a Abu Hafsin, right? Ja'a, let's use a better one. Amirul Mu'mineen. What does Amirul Mu'mineen mean? Anyone? What does mu'mineen mean?
Believers.
Believers. What does amir mean? Amir. Anyone knows what amir means?
Leader?
Leader. So what does amirul mu'mineen mean?
Leader of the believers?
Exactly. Leader of the believers. Right, so if I said Ja'a Amirul Mu'mineen, how would you translate that? Ja'a Amirul Mu'mineen. How would you translate?
The leader of the believers came.
The leader of the believers came. Now, because leader of the believers leaves room for some ambiguity, because it could be any one of the four rightly guided caliphs, right? If I say Umar at the end, right? Ja'a Amirul Mu'mineen Umaru. Right? Umaru is a substitute. So if you, and the way to test a substitute is that if you covered either one of those, the sentence would still be valid. The sentence would still be right. Right? So if I said Ja'a Umar, is it the same person? Yes. Right? If I said Ja'a Amir al-Mu'mineen, it's the same person. Right? So it's just a substitute, and it could be used just for extra clarification. Right? Same way you would use, right? Here is Qari Sahib, right? And then his name. So that's, right, you're giving one statement and then you're giving a substitute statement. And they both follow. So in this sentence, Ja'a Amirul Mu'mineen is Amirul Mu'mineen marfu', mansub, or majroor?
Isn't Amir marfu' but mu'mineen is majroor?
That's correct. Right? But the whole sentence is graded according to the first word, to the mudaf.
Oh, okay.
Right? So the whole sentence is marfu' because of because of Amir. The other one is just kind of attached to Amir. Right? So, and then Umar is also marfu'. So if they asked you, why is Amir al-Mu'mineen marfu'? It's the fa'il. Why is Umar marfu'? Because it's a substitute. It's a substitute conjunction, right, to that previous word. There's other examples. If I said, for instance, Ja'a Abu Huraira Abdurrahman. How would you translate that? It should be easy. Sorry.
Abu Huraira came, Abdurrahman.
Yeah. Well, they're the same person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Abu Huraira, Abdurrahman came. Right. Even in English, you would put a comma between the two. Right. So because Abdurrahman is his name. So if you covered either one of those, it would still mean the same thing. If I said Ja'a Abu Huraira, right, the point is made. If I say Ja'a Abdurrahman, same thing, the point is made. Right. Now, sometimes, right, a person may be known by a certain name, but that name could apply to any millions of people. Right? So that would be something different. Right? Only when you can completely substitute the two words, that's what it's considered a conjunctive substitute. Right? Right? So the ruling is إذا أبدل اسم من اسم أو فعل من فعل تبعه في جميع إعرابه. Right? If a noun is replaced by a noun or a verb is replaced by a verb, then it follows its inflection entirely. There are essentially four ways you could do this, and they're not really four methods, but there's four things that this applies to as far as substitutes. Right? So you could substitute something for something, right? A complete substitute. Right? So Amirul Mu'mineen, Umar. You substituted, right, the leader of the believers for Umar. That's a complete substitute. Right? Then you can substitute a partial substitute, right? And these are very rare. Right? These are very rare. Right? So if we just take each one, so if we say the first one, which is called Badulul Kul. Badulul Kul means an entire substitute. If I say Akaltu Raghifa, if I said Ja'a Zaydun Akhuka. Ja'a Zaydun Akhuka. How would you translate that before I write it? Ja'a Zaydun Akhuka.
Zayd came, his brother.
Close. Right. Always translate the fa'il and the substitute first, then the verb.
Zayd, your brother came.
Zayd, your brother came. Right. So if I covered Zayd, I said Ja'a Akhuka, is it the same person?
Yes.
Yeah. If I said Ja'a Zayd, it's the same exact meaning. So that's a complete substitute. Right. So this is it's the exact same thing as this. They're both the same. They're just alternative words, substitute words. Right. The second is a partial substitute. You're substituting a part for a whole. So, and if we go back to our coffee example, if I said Sharibtu al-qahwata, Sharibtu al-qahwa, Ameen, nisfahu, or nisfaha, sorry. All right. Sharibtu al-qahwata. Sharibtu al-qahwata nisfaha. nisfaha. What does nisf mean? Anyone know what nisf means? If you wish, you can look it up quickly.
Half.
Half. Right, so شربت القهوة نصفها. Right, how would you translate it?
I drank the coffee, half of it.
Good, very good. I drank the coffee, half of it. Right, so is half of it the entire coffee? It's not neurophysicists, neurophysics. Right? Is half of a coffee a whole coffee?
No.
No. Right, so this is a partial. Now you could just say شربت نصف القهوة. Right, so this doesn't necessarily have to be something that you use to speak, but it is in the Qur'an. Right? Allah says قُمِ اللَّيْلَ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا نِصْفَهُ أَوْ وَانْقُصْ مِنْهُ قَلِيلًا. Right? Stand in the nights, except for a little, right? Half of it. Right? So there you have, right, an example, and there's many examples within the hadith and others. Right? So it's more of a ruling that you should understand, theoretically at least, so that if you come across it, you'll understand. Because the Arabs do speak like this. So they'll say, for instance, أَكَلْتُ السَّمَكَ ثُلُثَهُ. I ate the fish, a third of it. Right? I drank the milk, half of it. Right? And we may even use this as well. The next ones are weird. Right? I'm not going to pull back any punches. It's a bit weird for us because we don't have any equivalent to this. Right? The next one is badul ishtimali. Right? It's a comprehensive substitute. In reality, all it is that you're substituting a thing for something that is affiliated to that thing. Right? One good example is ضُرِبَ Zaydun. I'm really going to test you guys right now on your revision. What does the ضُرِبَ Zaydun mean? This should be quite easy. I was told today I should carry a staff with me. Sorry?
Zayd was hit.
Zayd was hit. Good. Right, so the substitute, the comprehensive substitute, is where I'm going to put a word here that affiliates to Zayd, but shows you that it wasn't all of Zayd that was hit. Right, so if I said ضُرِبَ زَيْدٌ رَأْسُهُ, right, how would you translate it now? ضُرِبَ زَيْدٌ رَأْسُهُ. It's tough. Just wing it.
Zayd's head. Zayd was hit his head. Like,
Yeah.
do it in that order.
Yeah, it's weird, no matter how good you're at translating. Right? Pretty much Zayd was hit in the head. And you could say that a million other ways. You can say ضُرِبَ رَأْسُ زَيْدٍ. It would be the exact same thing. But this actually, it does add a rhetorical nuance to the translation. Right? The same thing if I said سُرِقَ زَيْدٌ مَالُهُ. Zayd was stolen. His wealth, I mean. Right? So, and we may have equivalents to this in English, right? So I don't want to be too unfair. The fourth one, right, which really just shows you how amazing Arabic is, because the fourth one is a substitution of error. A substitution of error. So even if you make a mistake, it's a grammatical rule. And that's an amazing reality to come to. Right, so if I said rakibtu farasan, what does rakiba mean? Anyone? Whoever has a dictionary. Rakiba, rakibtu, I rode farasan,
The horse?
a horse, yeah. Rakibtu farasan. So if I said rakibtu farasan, himaran, right? Rakibtu farasan, himaran. Right, so what I did there is I rode a horse. I mean, in English we would say, I mean a donkey. I made a mistake. Right, so himaran is mansub because farasan was mansub. Don't worry, it doesn't make much sense of why that's a rule. It is a rule though. Right? If you make a mistake and you change it to something else, right, then that's a type of substitute. Right? It could be done intentionally, and some of the poetry of the past, they did do it intentionally. So and many times what they would do is they would mask criticism of the kings under the guise of praise. And the kings, because they weren't literarily and rhetorically advanced like the poets were, they would be smiling and he's thinking that they're praising me, but actuality he's criticizing me because they use this tool. They use these types of rhetorical tools. Right, so that's basically what we wanted to cover today. Right, so you have the conjunctions. Right, those 10 words, they're used to add a certain meaning and to combine words under one ruling. Then you have the emphasis, which is added to a word to just emphasize that word, and it has to match in its plurality as well as the pronoun that's attached to it. And then you have the substitute. Either it's a complete substitute to where you can erase one word and the other word would be sufficient for the sentence. Or you have a partial substitute, which usually ends up being mudaf ilayhi. So there's going to be a pronoun that refers back to that original emphasized word. Any questions here before we close?
I had kind of a related question to the ayah فَسَجَدَ الْمَلَائِكَةُ كُلُّهُمْ أَجْمَعُونَ.
Sure, تفضل.
The subsequent ayah إِلَّا إِبْلِيسَ لَمْ يَكُنْ مِنَ السَّاجِدِينَ. So if Iblis wasn't an angel, then how is the illa there used?
Yeah, good question. There are two types of illa, or two types of istithna, I should say, because istithna means to accept, right? Exceptions. Istithna'at or exceptions. There's two types of exceptions. There's the istithna al-muttasil. There's the exception that the thing being excluded was actually part of the original thing. It was a part of the group that it's being excluded from. So if I said, for instance, جاءت طلاب إلا زيد, right? The students came except for Zayd. Zayd is a student, so Zayd is being excluded from a group that he belongs to. Right? That's called the exception that is joined. It's a joined exception. The second type is istithna al-munqati', the severed exception. It's where you exclude someone from a group who's not actually from the group, but there is affiliation between that thing and that group. So if I said جاءت طلاب إلا الفرس, right? إلا الحمار, right? The students came except for the donkey, right? So I'm excluding the donkey from a group that donkey does not belong to. Correct? Right. Don't say no, because that's just messed up for the students. Right? The students are not donkeys, alhamdulillah. Right? They're students. The donkey is affiliated to the students. Right? So it's their donkey. Right? There is an affiliation. So they came, but they left their donkey away. You would say, جاءت طلاب إلا الحمار, except for the donkey. So that second type is the type that applies to shaitan. Right? So he is not an angel, as Allah says, كَانَ مِنَ الْجِنِّ فَفَسَقَ عَنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّهِ. He was amongst the jinn, and he transgressed against the command of his Lord. right? But he was raised to the ranks to where he was worshiping alongside with the angels, so that they were there, right? And he was excluded from them. Thus, even though he was not amongst them in genus or in his makeup, but he was amongst them in closeness, I mean, in affiliation, I should say. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Barakallah feek. Any other questions?
In Tawqeed, can the emphasized word be nakira?
In Tawqeed, can the emphasized word be nakira? Yes, but it's no longer Tawqeed. It's just it's a descriptive phrase. So if I said sumtu, what does sawm mean? Sumtu shahran kullahu. Right? Sumtu shahran kullahu. I fasted a month. So shahran is not a definite noun. It's an indefinite. It's a nakira, right? Kullahu, all of it. So it is similar. Right? It's the same exact rules, really. Right? But in the breakdown of the sentence, it would be more of a description of shahran than it is an emphasis. Because if I said I fasted the month, all of it, then that would be specifically what's meant by tawqeed. Or if I said I fasted a month, all of it, right, then it would be more of a description of that month. Right? Even though it plays out exactly the same way practically. Right? Even if you do the breakdown, it's essentially the same thing. So right, you could say yes. Right? You could say yes. But generally it's only used for definites. And you wouldn't be able to do that with ijma'. Right? Most likely you wouldn't be able to do that with all of them, but some of them, yes. Anything else? لا تستحيون. Don't be shy to ask questions. Sayyidina Umar, I believe it was him, he said, do not seek knowledge for 3 reasons, and do not seek knowledge for 3 reasons. For a slang translation. And when he said do not cease to seek knowledge for 3 reasons, he says out of shyness, out of arrogance, and out of I forget the third one. لا يحضرني. So don't be shy if you have a question. If not, then inshallah next week we'll be discussing the mansub nouns. Right now, this is a perfect time to revise the marfu' nouns, because right, without revising it, it's just going to kind of dwindle away. Right, so fa'il, maf'ul, mubtada, khabar of kana, or khabar of inna and its sisters, ism of kana and its sisters, and then any word that corresponds to a marfu'. That's how you should know it in your mind. You should be able to say it. You should be able to write it all out on a piece of paper without looking at any material. Right? That's where you want to get it to. Right? And even then you can break it down. Right? So what are the sisters of inna? Right? Inna, anna, ka'anna, lakinna, layta, la'alla. What are the sisters of kana? Kana, sara, asbaha, adha, dhalla, bata, ma dama, ma bariha, man fakka, ma zala, and laysa. Right? And then you can say what are the corresponding nouns, right? The adjective, the emphasis, the substitute, and there's one more, forgetting it. But that's really how you should be able to break it down, because once we do the mansub, really there's nothing stopping us. That really we have all of it once we finish the mansub. And the mansubat are not a lot, but the main one is the maf'ul, the object. But there's 5 types of objects, but they all have the same exact ruling. They just have different translations, right? So we're really moving to a section that once we get it, you'll have enough to be able to do a lot. But you can't lose that what we already done. Right, so please revise the marfu'at. This is a perfect timing for that. And inshallah, we'll take the mansubats in the upcoming classes, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And then we will aim to do a nice revision, inshallah, of both. Wa sallallahu ta'ala ala sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Jazakumullahu khairan.